Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We have done all we can. We have left nothing on the table.
We've offered a vision for a healthier and more sustainable British Columbia.
So what do you guys think? Are we going to turn North Van blue?
With Election Day less than 24 hours away, how BC's provincial party leaders are spending their final moments on the campaign trail. Plus,
we want to make sure that we have water. That's my biggest thing, is making sure that we're protected.
Why BC farmers are frustrated, agricultural issues are taking a backseat in the provincial election, and what that may mean for the future. Also,
because these projects take some time to be delivered after approval, that's why we need a steady stream of them coming online.
Why some are concerned a major influx of new social housing in South Vancouver is facing delays, pushing the project years behind schedule. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. Saturday is Election Day here in BC, and party leaders are making their final pitches to voters. Katie DeRosa has more on how the leaders are spending the last day on the campaign trail.
It's the final day of BC's 28-day provincial election campaign, and the two main contenders for BC's next premier spent the day in cities around Metro Vancouver. BC NDP leader David Eby campaigned in ridings his party is aiming to hang on to: Coquitlam, North Vancouver, and Maple Ridge. Eby called for centrist voters to support him to defeat his conservative rivals.
If you've never voted NDP in your entire life and you never even conceived that you might, this is the election. This is the time for us all to stick together.
BC Conservative leader John Rustad was in Vancouver's North Shore, where the party is hoping to make inroads. He says after 7 years of NDP rule, people are ready for change.
Everybody is pumped for change. So what do you guys think? Are we going to turn North Van blue? Are we going to turn British Columbia blue?
Some of the more unscripted parts of the NDP's campaign came when Eby visited two mosques in White Rock and Surrey. The goal was to take one last shot at the BC Conservatives for refusing to fire their candidate Brent Chapman over offensive statements he's made on social media about Muslims. However, Eby faced criticism of the NDP's approach to the war in Gaza.
So there's an ongoing genocide. When are we going to hear our local government voice their calling on Israel to stop the genocide, to cease fire?
Mr. Premier, I think you are shortening the conflict just 7th of October, 1 year until now, which is wrong totally. Historically, we have more than 75 years of conflict. And you and all the other politicians in the West, they should recognize.
Well, I actually do think, Hamas are terrorists, actually. I do think that. I think what they did on October 7th was really awful. So I'm sorry if we disagree on that.
Another member of the community pushed Eby to better address Islamophobia, but found common ground with him in denouncing Chapman, who in a 2015 Facebook post called Palestinians time bombs. Rustad has been unfazed by that controversy, and seemingly so have his supporters. More than 1,000 people cheered Rustad Thursday night at a rally in Surrey.
1 in 2 youth are thinking about leaving this province, and they're leaving because they don't have hope. They're leaving because they can't afford to be here. They're leaving because they want to be able to build a future, and they don't see that in British Columbia.
At a campaign event in Victoria, BC Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau says hers is the only party offering a long-term vision of hope.
And so what have we offered this election? We've offered a vision for a healthier and more sustainable British Columbia.
So where do the parties stand on the eve of final voting day? A Leger poll released Friday showed the NDP with 46% support and the BC Conservatives close behind at 42%. The BC Greens are sitting at 9% support. Polls close at 8 p.m. Saturday, and the results will start rolling in shortly after that. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Vancouver.
All three parties have made significant promises to help improve the delivery of health care in this province. Chad Pawson has more on how workers are reacting.
A new hospital under construction in Vancouver, a modern facility for healthcare and its delivery, getting access to treatment and having timely care, and simply being able to have a doctor to turn to are all top concerns in this election campaign. Just ask healthcare workers.
Really, it's about shortages and the challenges that are existing in hiring, retaining, and recruiting the staff that run these operations.
So when family doctors are not properly resourced or supported, it impacts the quality care that the patients receive.
Decisions made in the early 2000s in terms of not investing in nurses, not investing in nursing schools, and not investing in healthcare has really contributed to why we're in this situation right now.
Party platforms have pages and pages dedicated to healthcare, making it tough for voters to figure out what will make a difference. All the parties agree bold, creative solutions are needed. The NDP would continue pushing to train and retain more family doctors and nurse practitioners and connect them with the hundreds of thousands of people without them as quick as possible. The Conservatives want to increase care through a new model, one that delivers services through both public and private facilities, but universally funded by the province. Meanwhile, the Greens are promising a so-called Dogwood model, 93 healthcare centers across the province to which people are directly connected for the majority of their healthcare needs. The bold plans and the platforms don't come cheap. Healthcare is the province's top expense, with nearly $33 billion committed to it in its current $89 billion budget. All three major parties have promised to increase spending, committing hundreds of millions of more dollars in an attempt to improve healthcare services. Still, that spending isn't guaranteed to produce results. Statistics show BC has struggled to reduce wait times. In 2021, nearly 90% of cancer patients got access to radiation therapy within benchmark timeframes, but that dropped in 2022 and even further in 2023. This as health spending increased. The BC NDP defends its work to improve health care and has been asking voters to allow it to continue with its initiatives, saying they are making a difference. The other two parties hope to tap into voter angst, something healthcare workers understand.
As voters, and I don't blame patients for this. If I'm in my community and I go to the emergency department because my son fell out of a tree and broke his arm and the emergency department is closed, I'm angry and I want change.
Mitchell and others say the last BC government has made progress and they want to keep going with the BC NDP. A group of Surrey doctors say as much in an open letter, writing they have found common ground and made significant progress and want to maintain momentum on a new hospital for Surrey, a new regional cancer centre, and more long-term beds, among other investments. Healthcare workers say promises and platforms are needed, but must come with the proper resources such as additional workers. Nurses want whomever forms the next government to guarantee newly established nurse-to-patient ratios in hospitals, which paves the way for the hiring of 8,000 more nurses. Both the NDP and Greens have so far agreed to this.
What we need to see to turn our healthcare system around is more policy solutions like minimum nurse-to-patient ratios. We need to do things that are going to ensure that patients get the care that they require and that the conditions of work are as such that nurses actually want to stay in the system.
Healthcare workers want voters to closely look at the party's platforms as they prepare to cast their ballots. In the meantime, they also say they're willing to work with whomever forms the next government, as long as there's no backing away from a problem that requires bold solutions and the resources to make a difference. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Vancouver.
While topics like healthcare, housing, and affordability have dominated the provincial election campaign, agriculture has received little airtime from the major parties in recent weeks. The CBC's Brady Strachan looks at why.
Oh, this one's going to be beautiful.
Janae Oliver pulls back the dry, dark husks on a cob of ornamental corn to reveal what's underneath.
Right? It's just each kernel is like a burst of sunshine.
Oliver's family has been farming these fields for more than 100 years, and they've been selling produce at Painter's Food Market for nearly as long. It's a thriving business that employs more than 50 workers during the peak season. This provincial election cycle, Oliver had hoped to hear more from parties about agriculture. To her, the one party that seemed to be championing the issue, BC United, dropped out of the race.
Agriculture is a huge part of BC, and let's make sure I know Kevin Falcon, when he was running, like I met him. He came to a group of farmers meeting, and he was like, I will be the guy that will stand for farmers. And I was like, oh, this is the guy. It's awesome. And then haven't heard any of the other leaders talk about it.
With party leaders promoting platforms on housing, healthcare, and affordability, some farmers worry agriculture has taken a back seat. However, important discussions have been taking place behind the scenes.
And BC Agriculture Council and our board went around across the province in the 4 to 6 weeks prior to now to connect with MLAs and candidates from all parties to share what the priorities are from the sector, to ensure, regardless of what party forms government, that everyone is clear on what the sector priorities are.
Those priorities include the formation of a Premier's task force to develop a provincial agri-food competitiveness and growth strategy, protecting farmland from residential and industrial encroachment, and increased funding to the Ministry of Agriculture and Food to better support farmers and ranchers.
The Ministry of Agriculture budget, like I said, we're in dead last, and when we're talking about numbers here, we're talking about 2.5% of the sector GDP right now is reinvested back into the sector.
The red ones are Red Angus.
Brian Thomas's family has been ranching east of Okanagan Falls for several decades. The most important issue for him this election is securing water for agriculture.
If we didn't have water and the stored water and access to water, we wouldn't have a ranch here.
He wants the next provincial government to invest more in water storage so that during years of drought, ranchers are not cut off, a situation that happened just last summer.
Like what happened up in Falkland or Westwold, then it becomes an issue. So it's something that the government has to realize that, they just can't say, hey, you're not irrigating today,
That's why it's so easy to lose a fruit crop.
Janae Oliver agrees. As more and more people move to the Okanagan, she wants politicians to ensure that farmers get priority to this vital resource.
We want to make sure that we have water. That's my biggest thing, is making sure that we're protected.
Farms like this one are vital to the BC economy, growing food and employing people who live here. She hopes that's something that will remain constant in the Okanagan, regardless of which party wins this election. Brady Strachan, CBC News, West Kelowna.
Following a CBC report, the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame has dropped a BC coach from its membership after he was convicted of assaulting a player.
Sport organizations are ready to start protecting those of us in the community who may have been vulnerable in the past, children and athletes that might be vulnerable in the future.
Rick Mang was inducted in 2017 as a former goaltender. Last week, he was sentenced to 18 months probation for assaulting a player in Port Coquitlam in 2022. The Hall of Fame says its board of directors unanimously voted to revoke his membership. CBC News has reached out to Mang and his lawyer for comment. The BC Lacrosse Association has suspended him from coaching until 2027. Darius Madavi joins us now with our first look at the weather. A little bit of a wet one. Is that going to be sticking around for the rest of the weekend, Darius?
Yes, definitely a wet one. Most of the rain comes tonight and through tomorrow. Probably the heaviest stuff before tomorrow afternoon. With that being said, this is a fairly strong atmospheric river. I'd say moderate to strong. One important thing to note is that, it's not targeting the same areas that the one did back in 2021. This is not going to be a repeat of that event. This one is probably going to be hardest felt on the north shore of Metro Vancouver in particular. On the west coast of the island, we've already seen very high rainfall accumulations, but again, not looking at a repeat of that situation. I really want to emphasize that. I know that a lot of people have said, it's just rain. We get rain this time of year. Yes, but it's also worth noting when that rain is going to be particularly hard, when we're going to see snow in much of the interior, when we're going to see those freezing levels come down, snow across the mountain passes. These are all what's going to be happening over the next few hours. So, worth noting. Rainfall warnings in place, wind warnings in place, snow warnings in place. So over the next few hours, just be ready, and we'll take a closer look at those accumulations later in the show.
Thanks so much, Darius.
Thank you.
There's no shortage of people in need of social housing in BC, but in South Vancouver, getting that housing built is taking longer than expected. That's next. A major influx of new social housing in South Vancouver may now be years behind schedule. Liam Britton has the story.
Council greenlit over 1,600 homes for the old bus barn on West 41st back in 2020. The developer at the time promised to build 175 units of social housing, a daycare, and a park by 2028. But now a new developer, Grosvenor, owns the site, and they're asking for a 5-year extension. Now, city staff are recommending that council grant this extension until 2031 or 2033, and they're citing the change in ownership 2 years ago, the fact that the last owner didn't really do much with this site, and the challenging economic conditions. In a statement, Grosvenor highlighted its, quote, long track record of proudly delivering meaningful amenities in all the communities in which we develop. In this instance, the overall development, including the market strata and rental, has experienced delays compared with what was assumed before our involvement. Unfortunately, those timelines were never feasible. This is due to the usual issues affecting our industry, market conditions, approval timelines, evolving government housing policies, and significant cost escalations across the board. A spokesperson adds they are facing delays with the entire project, not just the daycare park and social housing. But Green Councillor Pete Fry expressed disappointment with the delay of those amenities.
I am worried that this is a trend that we're seeing. We're seeing a shift away from the kind of delivery of social housing more towards how we can just deliver on more supply, but sacrificing a lot of those amenities that are really important.
The BC Nonprofit Housing Association says this Oak Ridge project is one of the bigger social housing projects in the works, but not the only one facing delays.
But what it reinforces for us is the need for that continued investment from virtually every level of government. Because these projects take some time to be delivered after approval, that's why we need a steady stream of them coming online.
Atke adds the project's phase build-out means the city will keep leverage to make sure the amenities get built along with the market housing. Council will consider the extension Tuesday. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
A marketplace investigation has found many popular restaurant chains serving halal food have staff members who can't answer basic questions about it. Charles C. Agro explains.
You can see the meat glisten. Before food bloggers Mohammed and Sarah Arfan eat at a restaurant, they need to get a few questions answered about the halal food they're being served.
So what we're looking for is the meat halal? Can we see the certificate?
So when an establishment is not well informed, they can lose a customer that day. For meat like chicken, beef, or lamb to be considered halal, the animal must first be in good health and treated humanely. Then a prayer is recited before the animal is slaughtered by a Muslim, with a swift, deep cut across the throat. To see how well informed some of Canada's top fast food chains are about the halal they're selling, and whether we can trust the certificates they show us, Marketplace went undercover, visiting 2 KFC, Boston Pizza, Popeyes, Osmow's, and Mary Brown's locations across the Toronto area.
Is the restaurant certified halal? Yeah. The whole restaurant is? Yeah. Certified halal? Okay.
6 of the 10 locations said their entire restaurant is certified halal, when in fact, none of them are.
I would be very disappointed if I was the customer of that restaurant and having to find out that I am being misled.
Subadar says the certification system is often misused, and a restaurant should not claim to be certified unless each ingredient and meat source has been verified halal. While the Canadian Food Inspection Agency requires halal products be certified, the certifying bodies, and there are more than a dozen in Canada, are not regulated. Subadar is calling on the government to change that.
First and foremost, we need to decide what the standard is going to be. Everyone needs to be aligned with those standards. And then there should be periodic audits, just like there's audits for everything else, right?
The CFIA declined to talk to us, but says it's up to the certification bodies to ensure religious requirements are adhered to.
As for the restaurants, Osmow's tells us that it will reach out to its certifiers to learn more about the certification process. Mary Brown's tells us that they are committed to transparency. And Boston Pizza told us that its locations which offer halal menu items, well, they are required to complete online training. KFC and Popeyes did not respond to our requests for comment. Charles C. Agro, CBC News, Toronto.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Darius Madavi is back with our look at our full BC weather forecast. Darius?
Well, we've got that Pineapple Express coming in, and I've been choosing today to use the term Pineapple Express instead of Atmospheric River because Atmospheric River just sounds very intense, as for good reason. It's very charged here in BC, but this is not going to be a repeat of 2021, and I know the term gets thrown around a lot, so I just want to emphasize that. But with that being said, this could be a very significant rainfall event. I know it's Vancouver, it rains, it's the fall, all that stuff. But at the same time, I know that some forecasters are saying this could be the 5th rainiest day ever recorded in Vancouver. We probably won't quite get there, but it's a possibility. We have rainfall warnings in place still, wind warnings. We have some snow warnings up in the north, special weather statements blanketing those mountain passes as well. You'll notice here, this is actually running from midnight last night to tomorrow, at the end of tomorrow. But the amount of snow declines because we're going to see those temperatures come up, but still some very significant rainfall coming. Again, here, a lot of it has already come for the south coast. So the west coast of Vancouver Island got about 100 millimeters or so by earlier today. But they've already gotten the worst of what they're going to get, but that moisture is definitely still feeding in to the lower mainland. Our worst day is probably going to be starting overnight tonight and then continuing through Saturday, at least much of Saturday. And then some rain will continue probably through Sunday afternoon. Across the province as well, some more snow breaking into parts of the interior, even as those freezing levels come up. Could be a significant snowfall event up in the north. If we take a look at our total accumulations expected across the province, again, this is running from tonight through tomorrow, and you can see very high totals in many areas, but a lot of that rain has already come for the west coast of the island. A decent amount has already come for Vancouver, but up the sea to sky, some very high totals, and across the lower mainland, some decent amounts, especially, again, up on the North Shore, quite a bit less if you are in more southern parts of Metro Vancouver, but not expecting too much in the valley. Again, those temperatures are expected to come up in the days ahead, but then fall again in the north as we get into Sunday and especially Monday. Monday we'll also see temperatures come down a little bit in the south as well. Conditions across the province tomorrow, as expected, are showery and wet, and across over the next 5 days, rain, mixed skies, and then some sunshine. Janella.
Put those rain boots on and go play in some puddles. Thanks so much, Darius.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on CBC Vancouver News. For news on the go at any hour, you can check out our website at cbc.ca/BC. Have a great night.